All right, so your little seedlings, your little transplants are ready to go into the dirt. One thing that I've been consistently doing is a step before I put it into the dirt that I believe has really helped the transplants take and not die. So I would say out of my transplants, very, very rarely do I see anything die from them. If anything, it'd be a bug or an animal eating them, but they're consistently healthy from the wind strip tray, and then going into the soil, they also go in quite nicely. So the thing I use is a bucket of water before it goes in. So I just watered this tray, and you can see the plug. So the plug is a mixture of peat, compost. Once the roots take hold into there, it's a pretty solid block. You can see nothing is really kind of causing it to move or anything. They didn't look so watered, so I watered them before I took them out of the tray, and you can see the difference in the colors. You see the darker brown up here and then the lighter brown. So the darker brown is where the soil, or where the water moistened the soil, and the lighter brown is where you still have dry soil. So that's an issue because the roots are still concentrated in the plug and they're not concentrated in the dirt, which means any sort of water that the plant will need in its initial stages in the soil is going to come from the plug. So if I just very quickly put this plug into there, yes, it looks very moist, but I can tell you right now it's still very light. So you've only watered the outside of this and not really the core into that. And remember, when you transplant, I'm going to make a hole that's deep, and then I'm going to put my plug in there. So now envision where the lighter brown it was on the plug, it's down into the dirt. So if I do that right now, in order for me to in order for the water to hit the roots, what the plant needs at this stage, right? Because the roots aren't all around, they're only concentrated in that plug. The water has to go the 4, 5, 6 inches into the ground. If you have some very absorbent soil like I do, it'll be practically impossible for me to get any water down into that depth. Yes, I'll get it here, but if I just pull back, because when you plant in transplants, you always want to plant into the stem to provide some support. But, and you see I just lost because the lighter stuff is gone. But so in order for your transplants to stay hydrated and moist, you put them into the bucket of water, and you'll see bubbles coming out of it, and that's just water displacing the oxygen or the air that's present within the plugs and the perlite. So once you don't see any more bubbles, it's fully hydrated. So now when you put it in there, I really don't have to water, because all the water, it's such an absorbent material in the plug with the peat moss and the perlite, it's going to stay very, very moist into the soil, and you're probably going to get 1 or 2 weeks as the root system starts growing outward, establishing its root system so it can grab on more water. So anytime you have transplants coming out of plugs, the plug is concentrated, it doesn't really absorb water that well. You really need to soak them in the bucket. Once you have them soaked and at that depth, your plant or your little transplant is going to have sufficient amount of water for the next phases of its growth.